Good evening, everybody. This is State Representative Eric Mortensen out of Minnesota. And tonight we've got a very serious topic here. And I'm using this software for the second time, so bear with me if it gets a little strange or glitchy. But tonight I welcome a panel of people who've been vaccine injured by the COVID vaccine in one way or another, maybe personally or family members. But in one way or another, they've been affected by in an adverse way to that COVID vaccine. So I think this is an important topic because every elected official across the globe, frankly, is telling people just to go out and get this vaccine. And I can't help but compare that sort of push to I just had a hip replacement surgery about a month and a half ago. And every time I ask my doctors, my nurses, the physical therapists questions about how much exercise I should do, should I still be on medication? Should I be on a walker? Whatever the question is, the answer is always, it depends. It depends on you and your situation and how you're feeling. But that sentiment is the exact opposite when it comes to this vaccine. So I think that is a very strange phenomena. And so I want to welcome the panel here. And we're going to start off, and tonight we're just going to hear their stories. So tonight we're going to start off with Becky. Becky, if you'd be willing to share your story, please.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to keep it relatively short because I got to get off to work here before long. So first of all, I just want to say that I appreciate Eric for getting everybody together so we can be heard. I got the vaccine on August 4th, and one of the first symptoms that I noticed was really a lot of like pinprickly kind of sensations happening all over my body, mostly my legs, and it was really itchy. Now that did go away. I'll give you a little backstory about my life before I head into what the main symptoms were. I had suffered with depression ever since I can remember. And so about 2 years ago, I was finally introduced to something called ketamine, and it was a miracle. It was an absolute miracle. And I was finally happy for the first time in my life. And so I had felt like I had finally found freedom. And 3 days after I took my vaccine, my mood started to go downhill and my mental health started to go downhill. And then my period was 2.5 weeks late. Now I know that I'm not alone in that, as there's been tens of thousands of women who have talked about, having either really heavy periods or missing their cycles completely. And so it's just been completely, honestly, jacked up since then. The biggest, most severe side effect, though, for me beyond that has been my mental health, which is, I'm guessing because of my hormones, completely declined. And the doctors won't listen to me. And as I stated earlier, my family doesn't even want to believe me. So, and it's gotten to the point where I've even been suicidal. And no matter how much I have been depressed in the past, I'd never been suicidal. So also, the only doctor that did kind of affirm what I was feeling was at my ketamine clinic. And she said that there were other people in the small ketamine clinic that she runs that had experienced the same symptoms as me. So, and then probably about 3.5 weeks ago, I noticed some heart palpitations starting. Now, I can't say for sure that it is from the vaccine or not, or if it's from past, bad decisions with my health, or if it's hereditary. I just think that the timing is it's just funny, like how this is just all happening. And I realized that now, like for I don't know how long, for the rest of my life, I'm not going to know what symptoms for sure, if I'm having, if any of them are from the vaccine or if they're from something else. I just recognize that that's it just makes me really sad to think that now I'm always going to be wondering in the back of my mind, is this another symptom from the vaccine, or is this just something else? So so essentially I felt like my quality of life at least 2.5 to 3 weeks out of every month was pretty much completely ripped up from underneath me. And I just, it's just been really hard to function on a level. And I was so happy before. I'd never been happier in my life. And then 3 days after I got it, it was just downhill. So I've been pleading for anybody to listen to me, because I know that I'm not alone in this. And so, yeah, thank you again, Eric, for inviting me on here. I just want other people to know that they're not alone. And yeah, I guess that's pretty much it.
I think you're on mute, right?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Thank you so much. Well, thanks for sharing that, Becky. And for anybody just tuning in, I've already kind of said this, but we're not making this super conversational. This is a very heavy subject. So we're just going to kind of continue to do kind of a round robin and keep going to person and hear how this vaccine has affected people. Then the next person that I've got here is Teresa, if you wouldn't mind sharing your story. Teresa, we can't hear you. Teresa, it looks like you're muted. There you go. I'm gonna unmute you. You there, Teresa? Okay, Teresa, we're not hearing you. Okay, well, let's give Teresa a moment here. Let's go to Kate, if you wouldn't mind sharing your story here, and we'll let Teresa figure out her mic here.
Okay, hi. Yeah, my name is Kate, and I got the Moderna vaccine on February 16th. I remember that quite clearly because my reaction to it did not seem to fit with what's listed on the Moderna website. I got very sick. I had every symptom that you can possibly get on their site, plus more. I had a fever, muscle ache, neck pain, joint pain. My arm swelled up pretty badly and it was red and itchy. Dizziness, headache. I thought about going to the ER. I don't know why I didn't go to the ER. I was so ill that when my son-in-law came over to bring me some, I'm into natural stuff. He brought me some CBD oil, and he literally looked concerned, like, like worried. This went on for 3 straight days where I felt absolutely, I don't know, the worst I felt. I've never had anything like this happen. In fact, the day I got the vaccine, I seemed fine, but that night I ended up waking up in the middle of the night feeling like I was going to die, and that happened that was about 20 minutes of that, and then that's when all the other symptoms started, and then it delved into more symptoms. I ended up with screaming tinnitus, which I've never had in my life, like a 7 out of 10 scale. Which was really, really horrible. I thought maybe I was having hearing loss. My daughter checked my hearing. I had dizziness that didn't go away. So my next dose was due, a month later. It's for Moderna. But the day I was supposed to have the vaccine, I was super dizzy. And a coworker said, well, I can go hold your hand. And I was like, yeah, okay, but that doesn't deal with the dizziness that I'm having. I also had a head pressure and all kinds of other strange symptoms. And I did start seeing providers, so I didn't see no one. I saw several allergists, functional medicine, my primary provider, all asking them what I'm supposed to do. I called the CDC. They told me to go back to my provider. I couldn't get anyone to tell me exactly what I should do. Like, do I go get the second one or not? And in fact, it was very confusing. I had one allergist say, well, it's kind of a gray area. You woke up in the middle of the night with this foreboding, this intensity. That can be a sign of like delayed anaphylaxis. Maybe that's a gray area. Maybe you shouldn't go. I don't feel like there was anybody to reach out to that really knew what to say. So the day that I was supposed to go for the second dose, I was so dizzy, I decided not to go. Thankfully, I did not do that because then I later found out that I had heart damage. And my doctor immediately said, that she felt it was a vaccine because I'm a vegan. My resting heart rate is normally like 50, 58. Um, I hiked all winter long before my vaccine. I went to the Boundary Waters the summer before my vaccine, hauling gear on portages, canoeing all day, and I've never had any heart issues. And I had baseline data, so that was also helpful. I had very good baseline data, and she did an immediate EKG, and I was in atrial fibrillation 24/7. I mean, consistently, because I ended up having to wear a Holter as well. So she did the EKG, wear the Holter, and I had atrial fib, which I never had before. Um, and some of the other symptoms have come. I had some neuropathy. There's just been a whole host of things, and I've basically spent the last 8 months trying to get better. I've been slowly getting better with the help of a private doctor who has seen more vaccine injured patients. I just asked her the other day, "Do you have other patients?" And she said, so many. She found a long haul COVID clinic that works with some people who are post-vax. I never had COVID. The reason I know that is because I did the labs. I did actual labs to determine that I did not have it. I got the wild antibody test. And then I have labs that show that I have markers similar to someone who has long COVID, which is kind of insane since I never had COVID. Some of those things have included, like the tinnitus is on that list. That's much better. Sometimes I have muscle aches and bone ache and difficulty. I was out in Washington, D.C. for a rally, and after that rally was over, and not that rally, but that day, the next day, I could barely walk. I almost needed a wheelchair. And in fact, my husband said, yes, the next time we go somewhere, there's no way you can walk all day. And the next day you're going to be unable to walk, which is not me in any way, shape, or form. I'm always on the go person. Like I said, I canoe, I hike. So this has absolutely been, one day I was great, and the next day this happened, and it's changed everything in my life. What was I going to say? I want to say one other thing. When I saw the doctor and she found out it affected my heart, she said, "Thank God you never got the second dose." There's been multiple times throughout this month-long period that I felt like I think I'm going to die. Like that's how it felt. But I also want to say, I know it's hard for people maybe to hear that there's people who've been affected because they don't see them every day in the news. But I have met so many vaccine injured patients and people after the fact. And it's opened up a whole, world that I didn't see before. And I'm a Christian, so I just look at that and say, God must have wanted me to see this. And I've met the most outstanding, wonderful, caring people who've been injured and just can't get their voices elevated. They get shut down. They get shut down on Facebook. I think I was telling Representative Mortensen, and thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you so much. That there was at one point about 100,000 people on Facebook with neurological injuries, and Facebook shut it down. So people aren't hearing these, and I think that it's important because you should be able to make an informed decision. So that's, and I'd like to get help for anyone who's had any issues. That's my story.
Well, thank you, Kate. As an avid Boundary Waters, like a Boundary Waters addict, I can't even imagine going from being able to, portage and carry gear and canoes and paddle all day long and have that taken away. So hopefully you can get back to that, because that is, to me, that's God's country up there.
I'm hoping so. I just love it up there. And just the idea of not being able to canoe all day, get out there. It is God's country.
Yeah. And we've got some people commenting here. I'll get to some of these, but I really want to stick to the format. But people are asking, are there groups? They know people who have been injured and they're trying to find, there's comfort when you find people who are in the same position. And there are a lot of people, I believe a lot of the media's goal, frankly, is to make people feel isolated and alone. And then I know people are not alone. You guys aren't alone. So if anybody has suggestions for support groups, whether that's a Facebook page that could get shut down in a day or something else, please feel free to comment on that. I don't know if you guys can see these, but I'll try to read some. I'll read Melissa here. She asked, there's a support group for in Minnesota for vaccine injured. She works with a doctor, and after his second Moderna shot, he declined rapidly and is now confined to his bed. She wants to find some help for him. So if you guys have comments on that, please feel free. I'd like to get Melissa some help there. And like you said, Kate, your guys' voices have to get elevated. And I think I did a bad job introducing this, because that's the whole point of this, is to try to give you guys a platform. Now, my page only has 15,000 people that follow it, but it's something, and that's better than nothing, I guess. So that's what I want to do, is give you guys this platform to get this out, because the media does not talk about it. So with that, let's go back to Teresa. Let's give this another go. Teresa, you ready? Might have a bad signal with Teresa. I don't see your lips moving even. All righty. Well, sorry, Teresa. I've heard your story. Teresa called me. I see lips moving, but you're moving slow. Teresa called me when I was on my way up north one day and told me her story about her husband. And I'm not going to try to repeat it here. We'll give her some more time to maybe get a better signal. But we need to get her story out for sure. Teresa, are you ready? Shoot. Okay, well then let's go to Rachel. Rachel, can you share your story with us?
Yes, hi. My story isn't personally, well, it does personally affect me, but not me myself. My husband got the Moderna vaccines with a lot of pressure from family and doctors and sort of things like that. And he passed away July 20th, 46 years old. They said because he was overweight, he probably died of a heart attack or a stroke. There were no tests if he would have gotten an autopsy to say that it was for sure the Moderna vaccine, but he wasn't having any problems before that. And then he just passed away. I'm a nurse. I work in a facility, or I did work in a facility where I saw a lot of patients with a lot of vaccine injuries. Our doctors, in so many ways, are being told that they may not speak out of turn about this vaccine. They're in fear of losing their license. Our nurses are either having to beg for an exemption, not medical because you can't get one, but religious. And if you're lucky, you can get a religious exemption and still work. When you get this religious exemption, they put you under all kinds of other scrutiny by making you do those nasal swabs that have the poison on them that can pass your blood-brain barrier. And I'm not willing to do that either. I did quit my job because there was so much harassment and so much pressure to get the vaccine. And we were hearing comments on a regular basis about those people who aren't vaccinated. They come to the hospital. We should just let them go. They're taking up beds. They're taking up space, and we don't want to deal with them. And I have to tell you, in the time that I was there were just as many vaccinated patients with problems as there were unvaccinated patients. And it is really sad. I get my Facebook shut down all the time. I get warnings all the time, trying to put the word out there and let people know about all these injuries that are happening. They're happening and people aren't listening. Yes, so you might have got the vaccine and you might be okay, but I'm not willing to take a chance on getting that vaccine and not be okay. I don't feel like I'm ready to die. I'm not going to say, okay, if I do and I die, I'm fine with that. And this is not informed consent. This is not even approved. It's an experiment. We're being experimented on, and people just don't get it. I know other people who have died. I have a friend who's supposed to be here tonight, but she was afraid to be on because she didn't want people to see her and start criticizing her or it to affect her job or anything else. She's losing her vision. She got the Pfizer vaccine. My nephew got the Pfizer vaccine. He's also losing his vision. One of my friends, she has heart trouble after the vaccine. Just to go to nursing school, she decided to get that vaccine experiment. And I also have met a lady whose daughter died after the vaccine when she had a seizure swimming in her pool and drowned. They're not the only ones, but people are afraid to speak up. I went to a rally in Minneapolis, and one of the vaccine injured ladies who spoke, she had to be toted away in an ambulance. I'm sure, no doubt, it was because of all of the stress that her body is under. This isn't okay. If we don't get the word out and the media keeps blocking us, we're going to see more and more people die or be seriously injured. And I hope that the blocking of this stuff stops. That's about all I have to say.
Yeah, and Rachel, your story. I mean, you and I have spoken a handful of times, and it's it's powerful, and it's sad because I mean, it's obvious why it's sad. You know, lose a spouse to this, and somebody commented about if I'm going to have a forum for people who have been hurt by COVID itself. And certainly, this is not to minimize COVID. People who have lost loved ones to COVID, COVID it's its whole own issue. But there's probably 3 million media outlets out there that are talking about that and cramming that, putting in front of our face every single day. So I think there's plenty of opportunity or plenty of coverage on what's going on with COVID, because it's literally ticking across the bottom of every news outlet for the last 23 months. So by no means is this meant to minimize anybody who's lost loved ones to COVID, but this is to give people who haven't had a voice. So I wanted to address that. All right, Teresa, are you
Can you
ready?
hear me now?
We can hear Teresa. All right.
Can you hear me?
Teresa, yes. I just kind of talked about how we first spoke a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, but I'll turn it over to you. And Teresa? Oh, shoot. I should have shut up sooner. Well, we can't hear you anymore, Teresa. I'm sorry. We're going to go to, I think Barb was calling
Oh,
in.
can you hear me now?
We can. Okay. I'm going to let Barb in.
Can you hear me now?
Barb, we can.
Yes.
I'm going to give the floor to you, Teresa. Go ahead and let's hear how this has affected you and your loved one. The floor is yours, Teresa. All right. Well, I can't hear her. I'm assuming nobody else can. So let's go to Barb. Sorry to do that to you for the third time in a row, Teresa, but we can't hear you. Barb, if you wouldn't mind sharing your story and how you've been affected by the COVID vaccine.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. I got the vaccine in April. And I mainly got it because my dad has cancer and I was going to be around him a lot. I wasn't too keen on getting it myself because, of the fact that it really hadn't been tested. But being that my dad had cancer, I just, bit the bullet and went ahead and got it. And, I had no side effects like everybody else right away. They had pain in their arm, or they, were throwing up, or they got headaches or whatever. But about a month after, my vision started changing. And my vision went from better than perfect 20/20 to right now I'm at about 20/50, 20/75. My optometrist, I don't know what you call him, the eye doctor, basically told me that he's never seen this kind of changes this fast. Even at my age, I'm 53, and you would normally get some kind of vision change around my age, but to experience what I've experienced, my friend Rachel's on here right now, and I can tell you firsthand that I can sit across from you at a dining room table, and your face is blurred. I can tell who you are, but I'm sitting across from my dad at Red Lobster and I can't see him clearly. I have to put my glasses on, these reading glasses on, just to look and see what I'm eating, just to see see my phone right now. I have to put them on just to read my odometer, my speedometer in my car. I can see fine, ahead driving and everything yet. But as of right now, I'm a professional photographer, have been for 35 years. And the fact that my eye doctor is telling me that I'm going blind is killing me. It's scary to think, but I've actually been counting the number of steps it takes to get into my house. Number of steps from here to there, just how many feet it is to get from, how many steps it is to go upstairs, things like that. It's nuts. I have a friend from my childhood that is blind, legally blind. She has been since we were kids. And I was the one that stood up for her when she was little. She always got bullied. And I know firsthand what it is to be like that, to have a friend like that and to have her watch her go through that. And her vision got worse as a child and she lost it completely. She's completely blind right now. I'm scared. My dad went to the VA to get a checkup and some other stuff done. And they told him that he had to get his booster. And he told him that he didn't want to get his booster because, he just didn't, at that time, he's 81 and he didn't feel that he needed it. And they told him that he needed to get it or he wouldn't get access to his medications. He would lose his insurance, his VA. Now, that's completely wrong. It's illegal. But my dad is one of those that he doesn't usually buck the system. So he just said, yep, go ahead. Yep, got the booster. And yep. And we were having a good heart-to-heart the other night until I brought up my vision again. And my dad is my rock. He's my best friend. He's always been there, always been my supporter. And my dad said, kid, it's just your age. It's not the vaccine. He goes, you can't blame that. He goes, it's not causing your vision loss. And I said, it's not me just thinking that, Dad. I've gone into my optometrist almost on a 2 to 3 week basis since April. And this has been going downhill since then. And he goes, well, you got to go by what your doctor's telling you. Yeah, I'm going by what my doctor's telling me, Dad. But my dad's still not supportive of it. We got into a big fight. And we usually don't fight. And I mean, I've rarely told my dad and been respectful, but I told him off that day. And it hurt me to leave. It hurt me to leave my dad that day. Because my dad taught me never make decisions when you're mad, when you're sad, when you're happier than anything, because it's not a good time. He also taught me never go to bed mad, never leave things unsaid. And I did that day. And I did call the next day and we talked. And I just made sure that we were okay and that he was okay. But, I mean, back in August, my dad came downstairs one morning and was red in the face. And, I mean, he didn't know who he was, where he was. And I'm like, Dad, are you okay? And he just gave me a deer in the headlights stare. And I'm like, Dad, are you okay? What day is it, Dad? He didn't know what day it was. I went ahead and I called 911. My dad had gone into AFib. No, my dad had the vaccine. And I know that there's a lot of heart problems going on around that. And I can't blame it, and they wouldn't say that was the cause or anything like that. But I truly believe that played a part, because my dad, his heart had been healthy. He had a stent put in about 10, 15 years ago. Otherwise, he's been healthy as a horse, besides his cancer. And getting the vaccine, and all of a sudden, August, he goes into AFib, and my pops almost dies on me. I know it's affected my vision, and I can't stand the fact that government steps in and tramps on our rights and says, you know what? You can't sue. You can't sue these drug makers, and you've got no recourse, because this vaccine's 100% safe, or we wouldn't give it to you. Yeah. Tell me that when I go blind.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Barb. I was unaware that in the multiple ways that you've been affected by it. Last here, we've got Suzanna. I'm just going to mute Barb here. Susanna, before we got things going, it sounded you told me that you were part of a similar roundtable that U.S. Senator Ron Johnson did, and I'm assuming your story is going to be similar to that. I watched that, and that if you guys haven't seen that, people watching this, you've got to watch it. It's about 34 minutes. I think it's kind of the condensed version that Senator Johnson sent to me, and it is powerful stuff that, again, people whose voices need to get heard, because the more they get heard, the bigger impact this is going to have. So Susanna, if you wouldn't mind, sharing your story.
Sure. First of all, thank you for giving us a voice here and a platform in Minnesota to talk about vaccine injuries. As you said, it's hard to speak up and come forward. There's such a strong narrative right now, where we're really divisive narrative. I happen to be a registered Democrat, but I really don't see this. It shouldn't be a political issue. I've said this before. When you think about our flag, right? You've got it here on the background. It includes both blue and red. And really, when you put those two things together, it makes purple. And if you think about the intersection between blue and red is purple. And that intersection of purple should be humanity. And when I hear these stories of other people, and it doesn't matter who you vote for, it shouldn't matter who you vote for. It shouldn't matter if you're vaccinated or unvaccinated. We need to support everyone together as human beings, and keep with our Constitution, and keep with the freedoms that we have in this country, freedom of speech for vaccine injured or other people who want to speak out, speak their mind about what's going on, and that's not happening. So maybe I'm jumping to the end here, but I can back up and tell you a little about myself and my story. Like you said, I was on the panel in Washington, D.C. on November 2nd with Senator Ron Johnson and a number of other vaccine injured, in addition to many doctors and specialists that were speaking on behalf of the effectiveness of the COVID vaccine and the issues around the vaccine. So prior to getting the vaccine, I lived a very healthy lifestyle. I still try to live a healthy lifestyle. I do the MS 150 bike ride with my husband from Duluth to Minneapolis. That's like 75 miles followed by 75 miles over 2 days, biking from Duluth to Minneapolis, and then also do the YWCA Women's Triathlon on a yearly basis. Fast forward to my second Pfizer shot on April 13th, and basically my whole life changed at that point. My very active lifestyle got replaced with a cane, a walker, and often a wheelchair. It didn't happen exactly that quickly. What happened very quickly, though, within less than 48 hours, I ended up with a really large lymph node on my neck, like a swollen lymph node. So a big lump here. I thought it would go away. I also starting to feel extreme fatigue. So I just mentioned that I'm a triathlete and long distance biker. So I'm aware of what it feels like to feel fatigue. And this was fatigue times 10. So it's almost like I did, several back to back triathlons as opposed to just one. I'm, really down for the count. I actually told only my closest friends, hey, something's wrong with me. I got the vaccine and I don't feel right. I don't know if I have cancer here or what's going on. I didn't want to scare people from not getting the vaccine. And I waited to see if it was going to get better, like if my body just needed to work through it. But 2 weeks later, the lump was bigger and I was feeling worse. I was bruising very easily all over my skin. In addition to the extreme fatigue, my family was noticing brain fog. I happened to be valedictorian in my high school, and my brain really wasn't firing as quickly as it had been. I know the one woman had just mentioned that about her father, so I understand, what it is. But sometimes I even need to close my eyes to remember what I'm trying to say or what I'm thinking about. So I went to the doctor, she started running a bunch of blood tests and then sent me to get an ultrasound of that lump in my neck, which ended up turning out for the ultrasound to say inflammation, infection, or cancer. So then they did an MRI. MRI said the same thing. Then they referred me to an ENT specialist who said, I'm not very concerned about that lump. It's not that big. And I said, that's great. I'm glad you're not concerned. I'm concerned, though, about everything else that's going on with my body. At this point, my heart, my blood pressure was way higher, and my heart rate I was having heart palpitations. So my heart rate, being more athletic, tended to be kind of like Kate was saying in the 50s. And then all of a sudden, my resting heart rate's in the high 70s. And then there's many times when I'm just standing there where my heart will pound at 120 beats per minute. And I'm literally standing there. And this happens a lot. So much so that I took off my Fitbit from my wrist because I got tired, and it's still happening intermittently. I got tired of seeing that my body was struggling, and I can feel it. I know when it's happening. So we started these series of tests by May 21st. So about 3 weeks later, things had gotten worse. I'm running into doors at this point. I'm very dizzy and kind of clumsy. I go back to the doctor. Meanwhile, my nurse practitioner that I saw maybe once a year has since left, retired. And I go to the next doctor there, and he starts running a whole battery of tests. Do I have Lyme's disease? Do I have like a toxic metal issue? So he starts checking into a whole bunch of other things. I say, can you check my lungs? I don't feel like there's anything wrong, but we take an x-ray of that and it looks like I have COPD, never been a smoker. So I'm like, I don't know where that came from. That's pretty odd. So we get a CT scan. When I went to get the CT scan, by that point, I'm like, I couldn't even walk really anymore. I was so extremely fatigued. I did not feel good. Like my whole body felt like it was shutting down. And I'm normally very active and very independent. I asked my husband, can you take me to get the CT scan? I don't think I can park the car and walk in there. So he brought me. On the way out, I was like almost crawling out the door. I had somebody come rushing out, like, are you okay? And I'm like, oh, my husband's getting the car. I'll be fine. By that night, we were in the emergency room. And my chest was squeezing tight. So I'm thinking I'm having a heart attack at this point. Like too many things are happening. And we end up getting a whole bunch of tests there, including the COVID test. I'm not COVID positive, and most of my tests are coming back fine. They said, based on this chest pain and the fact that you can't walk unassisted, you could stay overnight here at the hospital, but otherwise you can do this outpatient, like get an
I don't know if you
echocardiogram.
guys can hear me.
Oh yeah, we can.
Can you hear me, Eric?
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Should I keep going, or should we let her finally get her story since we can hear her? Oops, and I think you're on mute, Representative.
Was that Teresa talking?
It was. I don't think she can hear us though.
Okay. All right.
Well, I'll keep going then
please.
with my story. So we left the ER at that point. I didn't want to stay overnight. Like, hospitals aren't my jam in general. I don't need doctors very often, or again, until recently. So we went home, but then 2 days later, my eye, this right eye, I'm not able to see out of it. Like, it's really blurry, and my pupils like dilating and pulsating, and I can't see. So my husband had wanted me to go to the Mayo Clinic on Monday, and I said, no, let's just stay here. But now things are worse, and I'm like, fine, let's go to the Mayo Clinic. It's only an hour away. So we drove there. I was in the emergency room at the Mayo Clinic from 11 a.m. to 1 a.m. the next day, running a whole battery of tests, an EKG, CT scans of my chest and of my head and brain, an MRI of my brain and my neck. In addition to many blood tests. Not much is getting told back to us about what's happening. The neurologist spent like an hour with me. They asked me to hold my hands up and close my eyes, and then my right hand was dropping, and I was not. That kind of freaked me out. And then she did notice that my right pupil was bigger than my left, and so they were concerned about a stroke. I was concerned about a stroke too. I'm like, I couldn't hold my right leg up, and I couldn't walk at this point. They did the MRI, said I wasn't having a stroke, but then I said I could stay stay overnight. And I was like, well, let's stay. We're at the Mayo. The Mayo's going to help us out here. Like, they must know. If they don't know what's going on, at least they can study me and help to get other people not stuck in this place that I am, trying to avoid other people having extreme reactions like I'm having. I ended up leaving the Mayo Clinic with really not any answers, and just a follow-up appointment for ENT again for that lump on my neck, and rheumatology. They were sure it was rheumatology. I said, hey, what about neurology? I've got this eye thing and my arm's dropping, and I've got weakness on my right side. That seems like neurological to me. They're like, no, we think it's more rheumatology. So I met with rheumatology outpatient, and they said they thought it was Sjogren's syndrome or another autoimmune disease triggered by the vaccine. So I was getting treated for that with prescription medication, but nothing was working really. And I had this burning pain in my leg. Basically, I had this when I went to the Mayo Clinic, burning pain so badly. That's like a neurological issue. It's if you have burning pain. So I ended up going to also the neurologist here, who kind of blew me off, actually, to be honest with you, despite the fact that I'm like, hey, I'm having these problems. Then I went to a neuro-ophthalmologist for my eye, and this neuro-ophthalmologist was a godsend because he was asking me questions about my leg. I said, my eye is bothering me worse than, or not my eye, my leg is bothering me worse than my eye. But this is weird that my pupils like pulsating. My family can see it. It doesn't happen all the time, but it'll kind of like go in and out randomly in only my right eye. So he was very interested in my leg, and he said, I think you have small fiber neuropathy. And I knew from connecting with other people in the group that I probably did have small fiber neuropathy. So he said he had small fiber neuropathy and that he could do a test looking at my corneas to see if indeed there are issues with my nerves. So he ran that test and found that, yes, it looked like I had small fiber neuropathy in my corneas, which he said is a gateway to the rest of your body. So I went back to the neurologist and I'm like, hey, this neuro-ophthalmologist is saying it looks like small fiber neuropathy. Then my rheumatologist at the Mayo Clinic said, there is no plan B for you, Suzanna. So this is arrivederci. I'm here if you need me. So basically abandoned by the Mayo Clinic. And then I am now scheduled to do a small fiber neuropathy skin biopsy with my neurologist, but that's like, I don't know how many appointments I've had with him, at least 2. And then I had the, workup at the Mayo Clinic with neurology. So it's like, there's kind of this can't be neurological sort of undercurrent that's I think making it worse for anyone who's experiencing issues. And it's unfortunate that that part is being hidden, I guess, because really we know that vaccines are going to affect a certain amount of people. Vaccines can never be 100% effective for all people. There will be people with reactions. And right now, this vaccine isn't even covered in the vaccine injury compensation program. So if you're injured by the vaccine, you can try signing up for the countermeasures injury compensation program, which pays out about 8% of the time after 3 years. That is not going to work out very well for people who had to leave their jobs or don't have a savings account. So it's not just at this point. I don't understand how we can mandate something and not have a safety net to catch those people who end up with injuries. The safety net was set up as the vaccine injury compensation program. That changed in, I think, 1986, where it took the liability away from big pharma, which I think is a big mistake. Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, it doesn't do them any good to make the vaccine any better because it's all right if we die. It's not going to cost them anything more besides reputation. So this is the part that's extremely concerning for me. And then this divisiveness where it's like, I don't know if it's government or big pharma are like trying to pin, Democrats and Republicans against each other, vaccinated, unvaccinated, people who are wearing their masks right, people who aren't wearing their masks right. And ultimately, it should not be about that. It should be about what is right for humanity, what is best for human beings in this country, and what goes back to our Constitution. So maybe that's long-winded. I'm sorry if I used up more than my time, but I'm just very concerned about those things. And as I listen to the stories of the other people here and the loved ones that they've lost, it's heartbreaking that we're being cast aside. This is like segregation at its ugliest, and it's unfortunate. And I think we really need to start treating each other like humans instead of walking on the street hating people because they're wearing their mask funny or they're sneezing or something. Like, we need to understand that everybody is trying their best and that we are in a pandemic of trauma based on fear of getting the COVID vaccine, fear of getting COVID, fear of losing your job. And all of these things are being made worse, I think, by some of the mandates and the other things that are happening right now.
Yeah, well, I totally agree with that. I think leaving it up to, I'm an individual, and I believe in individual responsibility. I think the individual is paramount. I think that's what our founding fathers really envisioned, was letting individuals live a free life and decide what's best for them. And these mandates are the polar opposite of that. And especially, I had pulled this up beforehand, but you talked about there is no liability for big pharma. And I pulled this up earlier. I'll just kind of toss it up on the screen. And I guess I should get rid of that comment so people can actually see it. There we go. I've grabbed the VAERS data. I think this is updated through November 10th. And you can see adverse events comparing COVID-19 vaccine to all other vaccines going back to 1990, and how that data doesn't slap some people in the face pretty hard. I find it astonishing that that data isn't compelling for people. I mean, in the business world, a chart that looks like that would get everybody's attention very, very quickly. And there would be some decisions that would get made very quickly if somebody's revenue or profits or whatever looked like that. So these key metrics, they have to be monitored. And I'm shocked that that isn't on the news screen every single night to go along with all the other COVID stats, because that is, I think, just as important of a metric. Teresa, can you hear us? Can we try this again? Oh, I'm so disappointed. Teresa, I feel horrible. You and I are going to have to do this another time, and maybe we'll just do kind of a one-on-one. So I'm going to mute you here just in case you're delayed. And so I just tossed Teresa on mute. And Barb has shot me a text and said she wants to say something else. So Barb, did you want to take the floor here?
Just real quick. One thing I wanted to mention, and I know that in the medical field that, nurses and doctors and everyone working is being, bullied and ostracized, for even, not having the vaccine or not getting it. My optometrist, my eye doctor, told me that I couldn't even mention his name. He's been threatened with the loss of his license if he were to, back someone with an injury. He he feels for me and he wants to help me, but his livelihood, his paycheck, his livelihood to his family is being threatened for anything but, good stuff about the vaccine. There's no mention of injury. So I just it makes me mad as hell that the medical profession is being threatened by, the big guns, big pharma, the government, to keep their mouths shut about what's going on. And it's totally wrong. It's so wrong, because it's not just affecting those people losing their jobs due to the vaccine, not getting the vaccine, the mandates, all of that. Government shouldn't be able to mandate anything, force it on us. I mean, we're stepping into communism when you go that route. I just right now I won't fly my flag at my house because I don't support our government, but I love my country. God bless the USA and all that it's worth, but the people that are in power right now are doing a really crap job. And it like I said before, it's wrong that we can't pursue, for injury due to this vaccine. That right never should have been taken away by government. Never should have happened.
Yeah, so. I totally agree. And thanks for those comments, Barb. And
doctors,
I say this everywhere I go.
Doctors and professionals they should have free speech just like everyone else. And their livelihood shouldn't be threatened for speaking out, but they are. So I'm done. Sorry.
No, I love that, because so I don't know if people know this. We talked about it a little before we went live, but I think it was late August. My staff and I did a nurse town hall, and I know that Kate and Rachel, you guys were at the second one, I think, but or maybe both of them. But I reached out to the medical community. We called it a nurse town hall, and I had people asking, well, they're not quite nurses. They're they're in the medical field, but there weren't nurses, and some physicians reaching out. And I said, yeah, we're just calling it this, but anybody in the medical field who's affected by this first round of mandates. And I have to admit, kind of like you're saying, Barb, it was very disappointing to see not one single physician was willing to speak out. And I think that they have had a lot of fear thrown their way, and they're scared to death of losing licensing. And I get that, but nurses have licenses too, and they weren't afraid to show up. So I would hope more doctors out there would be willing to stand up and speak out, and then potentially, make some sacrifices the way a lot of other people have been. So, if you're a doctor out there, boy, I'd love to talk to you. And if you're willing to do something like this, because I think their voices are important. They're powerful. So does anybody else have anything to add before we conclude?
I just wanted to say that with my doctor too, same thing. She said, don't ever use my name and don't ever mention me on Facebook. I mean, but I know why, and I need her care.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really want to lose her care.
Right.
So that gets to be a hard bind too. If you're getting care from someone who knows that this is an injury. I also wanted to say that I haven't mentioned this before, but I also have other family members who have had recently learned a cousin in Chicago is having heart issues after the vaccine, and my sister's kid who has Tourette's, her neurological symptoms are absolutely off the chart. She's never ever looked like this in her entire life. So no, my sister's completely we're like, I don't talk to her enough. I apparently need to do that, but she's like, oh my gosh, something has happened to my kid. So anyway, I just wanted to add that, and thank you again for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else? Anybody?
You had asked earlier if there's we have a group of people. I think there are only 12 of us right now, but we know there are many more that are connected via Facebook Messenger. So for the injured who are looking for support, and we kind of, I'd say we're like triage for each other. So if you're interested in joining that, you can reach out to me, Suzanna Newell, via Facebook Messenger, and we'll get you hooked in with that group of Minnesotans who are injured and looking for help.
Yeah, thanks for throwing that in there. So Melissa, if you're still watching, you'd commented earlier, that's a resource for you. And I think you said it was a doctor that she works with. And I say this everywhere I go, and this kind of hits on Barb's point there, but it's really the people across our state and across our country that hold the political power. And this thing has been this massive political division everywhere. And I think there's far more things we have in common here. In fact, I saw a recent poll that the majority of Americans are against these vaccine mandates. So I think we have a lot more in common. Suzanna, you said you're a registered Democrat, but here you are in this issue. I talked to a state rep yesterday, a Democrat in the House, who says he's against vaccine mandates. This is not a partisan issue. What we need is the people across the state and frankly across the country to stand up and say, no, we don't accept this. You're losing the consent of the governed, and that's how we were founded. So with that, I will conclude this. I want to thank you guys so much for having the courage to speak out, because we know there's been hundreds of thousands of adverse reactions to this vaccine. And we talked to a lot of people, but unfortunately, a lot of people are scared. They're nervous to speak up. And so this is obviously a fairly small group of people, but we know there's many, many more people out there. And a lot of them have been commenting here, either themselves or people they know. So thank you again for participating. If anybody watching wants to try to elevate your voice, because you'd hear the media doesn't talk about what you're seeing and what you're going through, please reach out to me. That's how I'm trying to use this small platform that I have, but we need to talk about these things and get these stories out there. So thanks for tuning in, everybody, and thank you again for participating. We will see you guys out there.
Thanks for having us, Eric.
Yep,
For
thank
sure.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.